What's up, everyone? My name is Robin, and I'm so glad you tuned in again because this video is actually going to be the most important I've ever produced. Because today we're talking about lasting connections, friendships, and relationships. So, yeah, just let me philosophize a little about this topic, why it seems so difficult to find lasting love in today's chaotic dating landscape, and how you can probably get a clearer understanding of what this is all about and what you should be looking for, because we really have no idea. And I'm not claiming I have an idea, but I think I've read a couple of articles and books and listened to podcasts to get a better understanding, and it has helped me a lot in my private life. So I will just give back to you. And without further ado, let me just go through the blog post I also published on my Substack. And maybe make a stop at one point or another. I think this video is going to be a little longer, but it's definitely worth the read and the listen, of course. So let's just dive right in. In the last 100 years, the search for partners and sexual relationships has changed dramatically. People don't enter into marriage to have 14 children that help with chores and vocational duties, but to create a deep connection that transcends time. Why did evolution introduce romantic love in the first place, when partners are sometimes willing to kill themselves after a breakup? Well, from an evolutionary point of view, losing a partner dramatically reduces biological fitness and the possibility of reproducing. For one, you are no longer able to secure the continuation of your bloodline. And furthermore, losing a respected and loved partner makes you once again dependent on yourself to overcome every obstacle alone. It's understandable that one can fall into depression and even perish. It's a sign of nature that you should persist when you find a partner with good genes you want to see in your children. Nevertheless, many studies show that on average, offspring makes people unhappier. And not so fun fact, step parents are 100 times more likely to kill their non-biological child than biological parents. It gives you this sort of other perspective about bonding mechanisms between mother and child. There are even this weird, where you basically carry out a fetus for a woman that can't get pregnant, and you agree on it and you make up a contract and everything, and then when it's time to give the child back to the mother who set up the contract, the parents have found such a bond, unconscious bond, that they were not prepared for to the child that has emerged, that makes it so difficult to actually give the child back again, even though they were completely prepared for that outcome, So it's just like our hormones, like the oxytocin, for example, and the vasopressin, which are like the pair bonding hormones, which are first basically available to you when with a child, or not even then, when you actually find a partner that you like and it creates a safety zone, then oxytocin levels are raised in the woman, because of the, check if this is actually something I want to pursue long term and if I feel safe and comfortable with him. And then this springs over into the fetus, and then it's like, again, the pair bonding mechanism between mother and child. And for men, it's quite the opposite. Their oxytocin levels are actually raised when they are under a stressful situation and seek basically support by peers around them. So it bonds over adversity, basically. They bond over adversity, which is pretty interesting to me. Okay, and also I've talked to some people who have been married pretty early in life and who had children pretty early, and they said that they thought it would diminish their freedom and quality of life, but it was actually quite the opposite, because their capacity for feeling empathy towards other people and to put themselves in their shoes and to just get a different level of awareness what it means to change perspective with another human being. These factors were all dramatically increased after having a child, which made their careers even better and their relationship even better. Of course, if you are like I think you can never be really prepared for such a monumentous part of your life changing, basically, like from one instance to another. I mean, you're preparing for 9 months and stuff, but still, it's like something that has never been there before, and you're not ready to tackle it. But then again, when are you ever ready to tackle it? So if you are really confident in your partner and you've talked through it, and you can see yourself marrying that person, staying with that partner for long, I think it's like a pretty beneficial thing. Not to tell you to do it or anything. This is no advice at all here. It's just like something I've observed. As soon as you have a child, you become more neurotic. The fuck was that accent? Have less time for other pleasures and engage in more conflicts. It's pretty obvious that starting a family is one of the most challenging things you can do. But guess what? Everything difficult is often worth pursuing. Sustaining a relationship is very challenging. People are enigmatic puzzles, and most don't even know themselves and their character structure. So how can you even start to evaluate a partner? We consist of the self, consciousness, the subconscious, and defense mechanisms, which all manifest in our behavior, thinking, and self-reflection, and assigning importance to certain things. The subconscious is the steerer, unrecognized or unseen, that basically makes up 80% of the iceberg that is hidden underwater. Understanding this is incredibly important, even in relationships. Both our genes and upbringing, as well as our environment and stochastic probabilities of our biology, make us who we are. The often used ocean personalities include openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And did you know that 50% of these are passed on hereditarily?
Hereditarily.
And the rest comes from natural randomness of our nervous system, brain, hormones, and so on. Little of it has to do with upbringing, actually. Even in twins who share the same DNA, it can look differently, also in terms of organ size and function, for example. If your mother once described a stranger as repulsive to a friend and you overheard it, the subtle pieces of information are processed even if it wasn't your mother's intention. Then there's also how much sleep you got, the lead concentration in your tap water as a child, the missed good morning text, whether you smelled someone's sweat who was afraid earlier that day. It's such things that affect the subconscious and influence us every day, making the dynamics in relationships so fascinating. We tend to fall in love not with those who care for us in an ideal way, but with those who are familiar to us. Psychotherapy has challenged the view that trusting our instincts will inevitably lead us to people who make us happy. The theory suggests that we do not initially fail at love with those who care for us in an ideal way. We fall in love with those who take care of us in the usual way. And that could make a big difference. Adult love is modeled on a template of love created in childhood. We can believe in finding satisfaction in love, but what we are really after is intimacy. We try to recapture within our relationship the certain feelings we experienced in our childhood. And these were rarely limited by tenderness and care. The love that many of us experienced early on may have been associated with destructive dynamics, feelings of wanting to help an adult who seemed powerless or being deprived of the warmth offered by us, by a parent. Our fear of her or his anger or insecurity about communicating our deeper desires. How logical then that as adults we reject certain candidates not because they are bad for us, but a little too good. In a certain balanced, mature, understanding and reliable way. Because to our hearts, such a person feels alien and undeserving. To choose partners wisely, we need to understand how our suffering, compulsions, affect our feelings of attraction. Examining our emotional history can help us understand our limitations in choosing a partner, which have been influenced by past experiences. I'm a huge proponent, although I've tried my test lesson basically, but I'm a proponent of therapy. And there's this thing going around with like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you need to be like a masculine guy, hit the gym and everything will work out and stuff. Sure, of course, yeah, hitting the gym, eating good, sleeping well, that's great, but therapy is a different kind of level that enables you to dive into these patterns, these subconscious patterns that will not otherwise be really accessible to you. Maybe through meditation and like mushroom trips, but yeah, you really don't often got time for that. And talking to a professional about it, who is asking the right questions, who will not give you like direct solutions to your problems, but who will lead you to these solutions, to finding them yourself, is actually something very powerful. And so I believe, especially in situations like this, when you reflect upon your childhood and you notice some weird patterns of behavior that are still like being processed by you, and maybe formulate certain ideas or actions in your current life situation, maybe it's a good thing to actually uncover these, where they come from. That's what I was talking with or about with the character structure as well. It's like it's a 4-part series on the Andrew Huberman podcast with Paul Conti, a psychologist whose expertise is on trauma, and he gave this picture of the character structure and how it works, and it's incredible. I can highly recommend it. I will go into it in some more detail now as well, but also listen to the podcast. So what makes a good relationship then? Curiosity about your partner and paying attention are important. You know your partner's feelings best in the first few years because you neglect them afterward. Ask more often, what is happening here that I didn't notice before? No one wants to be generalized, but understood and seen. Don't take the partner for granted. As mentioned before, we are complete mysteries and it's worth exploring them a little deeper at all times. And not that way. I didn't know it. I wrote that there actually. So you should have individual happiness, independent happiness, and some level of self-awareness before entering a close connection. And don't dismiss the possibility of finding someone who is worth it, someone who can handle it, someone who you're compatible with, and that you don't have to be perfectly compatible at all. It's not about dating until you find the right one, but more about finding someone whose fundamental values and views align with yours so much that you fall in love. People often apply reductionist thinking, assuming, for example, that if they like the same kind of music, they will get along well with their partner, or that they met through work, so they automatically must share the same views on work, drive, and passion projects. There is a hierarchy of determining factors for the success of a relationship, and that may not even be part of it. Attachment to family, hobbies, interests, and culture is in the lower to middle parts of the list. What matters is the drive to invest in a shared future. Once you've found that person, choose together to step out of this broken system that dictates what you should think about love, romance, and sex. Ignore it. Ignore it together, and you will love in the end. Tell yourself, this thing I've chosen to get into is complicated and difficult, but it's valuable. It's not uninterrupted joy, no, it's an enigma, but it's worth to explore. When you prioritize each other's preferences and values, the relationship will flourish. Sorry, I got an allergy attack here. Trying my best to control it a little. So, people have different generative drives, which ideally should be greater than the drives for pure pleasure or proactiveness, aggression. Generative drives offer the potential to act more positively or negatively at any given moment. Ideally, we achieve a state of satisfaction, humility, gratitude, and joy that we pass on to others and inspire those around us. If the drive for pleasure or proactivity outweighs it, it can lead to envy or demoralization. And trust me, you don't want to look at life through the lens of envy. It's probably one of the most destructive lenses to look through life because it tears down yourself and everything around you. The difference between envy and jealousy is that jealousy often accompanies feelings of determination to better oneself, while envy usually results in you tearing others down instead of uplifting yourself. Envy is the gateway to narcissistic behavior. What is crucial is to cultivate an understanding of the importance of compromising, of the transactions in the relationship and entering into them because you find the other person interesting, lovable, or important, not because you feel compelled. Doing things in a relationship out of a feeling of coercion may evoke unhealthy defense mechanism influenced by all sorts of subconscious issues. Suppose two musicians with a high generative drive come together. Both will show interest in each other's musical tastes and support each other. If the generative drive is too low and the aggression drive too high, then I think my music is better than yours. If the pleasure drive is too high, then they think, I want to hear my music, not yours, because I really know it. Instead of, hey, I'm interested in this music because you're interested in it and I'm interested in you. I want to experience something of it with you. And let's say that the person then realizes, hey, this isn't my thing. This isn't what connects us. Why should that be the end of the world then? One person goes to the concerts and the other one doesn't. We become too reductionist and think, oh, here's a bunch of factors we can identify, and that leads us to lose sight of the primary factor, namely the generative drive. Doing something for the other people's sake, seeking compromise, and then being aware of the giving and taking in the relationship. If there is like an equality, and it doesn't always have to be equal, of course. There are times where one person seeks more attention, needs more caring, and then it turns around again. The thing is that you are there for the person and you go through the struggle together. I love the idea that healthy relationships revolve around the factors that are truly important. Someone is able to be curious about their partner's interests, even if they don't share those interests from the perspective of actions and gratitude. I think many people feel that if they're not really good at something or don't know something, then it's not for them, which is the opposite of capability and gratitude. Because gratitude is closely connected to humility. How can we know everything? How can we be good at everything? It's an appreciation of differences and strengths or weaknesses. The amount of potential within us builds up and changes in every moment. And if I change them in this moment, they are changed in effect by next moment. If I do something thoughtless to someone because I'm in a bad mood, what do I do then? I project my aggression. I do something that basically makes me worse than I am. And then I feel worse. In the next moment, whether it's about me or someone else, the drives are the potential within us. But we actively work on them, determine them, and change them. In arguments, you often have to ask yourself whether it's about yourself, the situation, or the partner, and then make profound decisions instead of pushing it aside or looking for escape plans. Promoting communication in the form of quarterly getaways, where you only explicitly talk about future plans, children, love, disputes, and so on, is a great way to align your lives. Monogamy requires selflessness, respect, trust, and honor, all of which are lacking in modern society. You have to communicate boundaries, joys, views clearly, and be open. It's not about finding the perfect match, but about growing together. People often mistake that everything you need in a relationship is love. And don't get me wrong, love is a critical component. But how can you even describe love? Is it the butterflies in your stomach when you see the person? Is it the feeling you get when you are not with that person? Like, even defining it alone is simply impossible because it's very subjective. And some people value respect more than love because, well, with respect you actually have something you can grasp, that you can clearly measure or count on. But love is erratic and it's fleeing. Sometimes you feel more love, you feel more attracted to the other person than at other times, and I will go into that as well, why that is the case and how to handle these situations. And yeah, we shouldn't solely rely on it for everything we base the decisions in the relationship on. So yeah. Why do people have affairs? Now it gets juicy, guys. Listen up. According to an affair study, obviously very difficult to get exact data, 50% of men cheat in a marriage and 26% of women do. Men's main reason, it just happened, so low risk, little effort, optimal situation. Women's main reason, unhappy emotionally and physically with their current partner, so they're looking for alternative in case of a breakup and having strong emotions for the person. That's like you met someone new at the workplace and he seems really kind, he suddenly gives you some avances and you first reject them, but then you notice like your marriage isn't working that well, or maybe this partner is like filling up gaps that are seek, and so you're more and more inclined to do it. And with the main, it's like it's done basically in comparison to that. So yeah. Yet only 2 to 3% of paternity tests yield surprises. For men who are unhappy in their marriage and those who are not, there were no deviations in the infidelity rate. That's also a pretty interesting point. People long for new experiences, so it's harder to stay together in the city than in the countryside, for example, and for celebrities to have close relationships. You simply have more options that are interesting, and if you're not aware of what you're looking for in a partner and on a deeper level, it's easier to get lost in the pleasure drive. There's also emotional and financial infidelity. In the TV shows Cheaters, the betrayed partner caught their significant other with the help of the show crew going into a hotel room with another person. And when they confront them with a hidden camera, the first question men asked was, "Did you fuck him?" For women it was, "Do you love her?" Both sexes are fundamentally different in their approaches to love and relationships on average. As soon as you start thinking about sex, oxytocin is released, reducing fear, providing security, causing well-being, and increasing perceptiveness. In addition, in a woman, a safety check takes place in the prefrontal cortex, the logical and planning part of the brain, to determine if a good connection has developed in the relationship and if she's ready for it. So, why do partners separate? Since the 1970s, there has been a general upward trend in divorce rates worldwide. However, this pattern varies considerably from country to country. The divorce rates are lower in the younger cohorts. In the USA, about 50% of marriages end in divorce, and I think we can add another 20% of parents that just stay together for the children's sake. This was based on some research done by a divorce attorney, actually, who has spent the last 40 years basically going through divorces, setting up testimonies and all that kind of stuff. So he's like in the trenches when it comes to this stuff, and he has seen some horrible stuff going down and betrayal and court cases like $10 million worth. So yeah, and he's like, well, most of them are like roughly 20% of the ones who don't really want to stay together because of the children. It can have incredibly subliminal reasons. If one spouse commutes for more than 45 minutes, the couple is 40% more likely to divorce. If the couple has been together for more than 5 years, the probability increases by only 1%. And that's also insane to think about, like the commute. Okay, well, 45 minutes, one way, two ways, half an hour, 1.5 an hour, that's a long time, you know? And if like there's traffic or something and there's already food on the table and she's like preparing a nice glass of red wine and then he or she doesn't like show up, you know, it's like, of course there's going to be conflict, you know, but it's crazy to think that this is like the lever that actually triggers it. However, I want to make sure you know these are only statistics. What really counts are the decisions you make together. Nowadays, you are culturally programmed to try things out, change partners, and empower yourself in the process. We often date to make ourselves familiar with separation. If the smallest obstacles come up, a lot of young folks are not equipped with sufficient knowledge on how to deal with it, so they rather quit now before it gets ugly. But how are you ever supposed to grow if you don't face the struggle, actually? Many marriages and relationships end because one person believes they found their soulmate, who all of a sudden seems so perfect in areas that the previous partner doesn't. And this assumption that a partner must be perfect in every aspect is simply illogical. The idea that he or she will never upset you or let you down is flawed. Love isn't about never letting that person down. It's about never wanting to let them down. My own foolishness, impulsiveness, and humanity might be the cause, but I don't intend to cause it actively. And when you look at couples who have been together for 60 years, you see harmony. But what makes it beautiful is that they've endured all these hardships and thrived because of them. You see the partner as something replaceable instead of working on the problem. It's really hard to admit to yourself that it might be your fault, so you always look for the blame in other factors. Generally speaking, there are four main reasons for separation: criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. Contempt is the strongest predictor of separation. Don't get me wrong, of course, there's room for criticism, for example. It depends on how often and how intensely it is expressed. Defensiveness is a lack of empathy and a failure to take other people's position. Stonewalling can be understood as cutting off emotions, and contempt is a feeling that the other person is worthless, so you resent him or her at their core. As always, it's hella difficult. On the one hand, you want security, protection, reliability, predictability, and on the other hand, adventure, novelty, risk, surprises, travel, mystery, and so on. And when the people are asked what they're most attracted to their partner, they say when we are apart or when we see each other again. So there is a desire rooted in longing and absence. And the second group said when he or she is in his or her element and pursuing their passion, or when others envy them. Experiencing the partner independently and confidently, and if they do something that captivates them, makes them interesting. Desiring someone is one thing, needing someone is a passion killer. The third group said, when we love together, when he or she surprises me with something or when something new happens. So there's a paradox between love and desire, because exactly the ingredients for love stifle desire. It's a balancing act that needs work to function. And if the routines you've established in your lives hinder that, or even worse, suffocate attention for each other, then you will have a hard time keeping it up. When it comes to the bedroom, sexual privacy and foreplay are important. When you let go of your responsible and prudish side in the bedroom, passion can arise. Intellectual women often seek new experiences in bed, so open communication is crucial. You have to realize that sex is often planned in a marriage, so spontaneity, focus, and presence are important in the act. It's mainly about communicating about sex. When you bring up the topic, the partner is often startled, so you have to find a good tone, understanding, and collaboration. If you are ever dissatisfied, you should consider your current situation in life and then whether it's the relationship itself. Remember when the best sex happened. What was special about it? It's not the small factors like penis size, wetness, boobs, does it look good right now, am I doing it right? It's these thoughts exactly that make the sex worse, because the brain is probably the biggest sex organ. It depends on the connectivity and experiments and passion. Mindfulness and meditation, in the sense of really feeling it, processing thoughts better, taking short erotic breaks, and communicating openly, that all helps tremendously. When you fall in love and enter into a relationship for the next 6 months to 2 years, you are in the honeymoon phase. The neural pathways are comparable to those of people who use cocaine. And then the whole chemical cocktail of happiness eventually wears off and you view everything in a new light. So just be aware of that. As you've now explained in detail, every individual is actually an unfathomable mystery. And if you proceed carefully, you may be able to discover enough mysterious things in the person you've chosen to find that certain something that drew you to each other at the beginning, and to keep it alive. With some care, you can avoid putting each other in a particular box, so the punishment is immediate if one of you just dares to break out of it, and you both despise each other for the resulting predictability lurking just below the surface. There is an I, a you, and an us, and the us functions completely different than the I and the you separately. This is also something I had recently came to mind. Mental health isn't something you're carrying around in your head. It's basically dependent on your circumstances, because the story you're rhyming in your head is always just like a framing of what's going on around you. So if your nervous system is actually influenced by the partner and your friends and your family and even the random guy staring weirdly at you at the beach, like the mental health is dependent on all of these factors, you know? So you should always be aware that you can work on perceiving things differently and most importantly to form your close environment so that your mental health is actually flourishing and not being diminished, you know? That's just so interesting. Like if your partner, you're so closely connected and bonding that your partner is like nervous, you will automatically feel nervous as well, you know? We hold assumptions and a picture of our partner, and if that picture is shattered, it will lead to second guessing. If you're lucky, you might even catch another glimpse of what life could have been like if both of you were better people than you really are. That's what happens when two people fall in love. For a while, both become better people than they really are, and then the magic fades. Both will experience this as a gift. Both have their eyes open and can see what no one else sees. Such a love provides a brief glimpse of what could be if the relationship remains authentic. In the beginning, it is given to one by fate as a gift, but it requires incredible effort to recognize it as a gift and maintain it. Once that has been recognized, the goal is clear. Love means sacrifice. In the theater, it's affection up to sacrifice. You're willing to lose a part of yourself for the common good. And I believe it's worth it. I talked in the beginning about people wanting to commit suicide when they break up with their partner. And it just should show you how incredibly important and foundational this emotion is, really. And how you should, on the one side, feel the emotion fully with your heart and your gut, but then also do like a routine check with your head sometimes, you know, especially in the dating phase. I'm a fan of, before you slide into the honeymoon phase, to assess pretty neutrally, well, is this person actually like sharing the same values I have? Are we interested in the same stuff? I mean, I gave the example with the musicians, so it's not necessarily good, but still, it's better to share some common hobbies or interests than not sharing them, you know? Or how is the relationship with their parents? Again, these things, although the generative drive can still be established with everything like traumatic experiences, whatever, in the past, it's more difficult. And if the person is not aware of it, and you don't really see signs of this generative drive, it can become really complicated later on. So I'm a fan of like using my head in the beginning during the first dates to do a check if this is actually something that's worth pursuing for the long term, you know, because these feelings, these butterflies will come up. If you see the person and you really like them, you think they're cute and whatever, then it's really difficult not to feel those. So just be aware of that, I guess. And then you should still fully experience it. If you're really seeking love, and at the core, everyone wants to love and be loved. So it's like a common thing that's like connecting every one of us. And it's probably also the best feeling you can feel. Time seems to stop if you stare into the eyes of another person you love. So it's always worth it in the end. And all the heartbreak and that may come afterwards, it's usually still worth it if you look back at it, you know. And there are some tricks to handle breakups better than other tricks. And yeah, I think it all starts with loving yourself, of course, so that you can actually be a good partner and you're proud of yourself. And yeah, it's basically like, hey, would I let my son or daughter date that person? And it's a pretty simple trick, but yeah, if you would answer yes to the question, so concerning you, then I think you're on a good point. Okay, thank you so much for watching, for listening, and I hope to see you on the next one. Make sure to check out my ebook, it's in the description below. Also, join my community at school if you haven't already. It's completely free. I post amazing content there, and yeah, I hope it helps. Thank you so much for watching.